Hi everyone, welcome to another conversion lab. Today, Monday the 3rd or 4th if you're in Sydney or Australia or New Zealand. Right, so today I wanted to go through the sort of economics impact on marketing. But before I do that, since I want to have time to cover everything, the site that if you're looking for global data is tradingeconomics.com. It tends to have data on every country. So a lot of the stats that I'll be covering will be Australian centric because I was just looking at it today. So it was fresh in my mind, but you can find very similar stats for pretty much every country around the world on tradingeconomics.com, right? So grab that there for whatever we're going to cover today. You want some stats and stuff for your separate market or markets. Right, with that said, let's go through the actual slide here. Oops, nope. All right, it'll help to get the right thing going. Okay, slideshow. All right, so a bit of history. So my preferred description of this part of economics is from Austrian economics as a school of thought, not the Austrian as in the country, which is distinct or somewhat parallels or opposite of the Keynesian school of thought. And so I'll just leave it at that. This is not to talk about the merits of each school of economics, but basically the ideas that I'm going to be presenting come from largely from the thought of here, and not some marketing guru who's as in not some marketing guru. I've heard a few people use a few terminology from especially the idea of time preference. And the time preference comes from Austrian economics, largely the ideas of Karl Menger, late 1800s. All right, with that said, let's cover the topic of time preference because that underlies everything, or sort of like is the core concept where everything washes to. And so in very simple terms, I've covered this in the past, but I wanted to do a bit of a refresher because I was working on a campaign where we changed the time preference of the offer, and that actually made a massive difference to the.
Oh, you got my stuff. Could you just pop it in the box?
Okay, cool. All right. I shall put Ona into a box. All right. All right. So time preference rises from basically from two. Well, firstly, it's the fact that we value things today versus tomorrow or in the future. Right. So $100 today versus $100 in the future. Most people will pick obviously $100 today, and that essentially is the time preference that you have for stuff now rather than later. Which also ends up mudding how we make decisions because, and I think I covered this in last week's call, where I said that there are a lot of good offers that kind of pay off in a slightly in the longer term. So like if you're looking at a 30-day conversion cycle, you might see that it actually makes a lot of money. But if you're looking at a 1-day or a 5-day cycle or a payback period, you might see, oh, I've just lost a bunch of money. But because the offer takes a while for people to come around or to convert or to understand or whatever it is, you throw out the campaign when had you waited a bit longer, you probably would have resulted in something that was profitable. So that essentially is a example of time preference, that we are so present biased that we forget that delay sometimes gives you optionality, right? And that's essentially what the idea behind all of this is. So it comes from two things. Obviously, the future is unpredictable, so you want to grab the money today instead of something in the future, and impatience. We're all a little bit impatient. We want everything now, right? The whole McDonald's drive-through. So I'm sure you've seen this in the past, the delayed gratification experiment. Two kids, they tracked them over many years. Hopefully, I'm not butchering the experiment, where the kid who was willing to wait for 2 lollies for whatever, an hour, half an hour, whatever it was, showed that that their bias or their behavior was to delay gratification for a much bigger payoff, while most kids just ate the single candy today and missed out on doubling of the candy or chocolates or whatever it was, right? And that essentially is that whole idea of delayed gratification showing up as a time preference. Right. Now, this automatically creates the idea of interest rates. And especially in Austrian economics, it's a reflection of the time preference. So if someone lends you money, they sacrifice the ability to use the money today in exchange for a promise of more money or something bigger later, right? So the price, the interest rate is the price of the waiting, right? And that's what it's designed for. So you compensate the lender for the preference for their preference for the present. Now, this also means like if you want a rush job done, you pay more. Whereas if you want the your legal contract or whatever it is to be done in a week from now, then you pay a normal price. But if you want it done in the next hour, then you have to pay a premium to rush it through, and that basically reflects. So the pricing ends up reflecting this idea of time being a factor that has got value, and that waiting time or the time itself is essentially shows up as the interest rate. So that is I'll lend you $100, get 105 in the future. The $5 a difference of 5% is the premium for delaying consumption, right? And then the rate, obviously, across many individuals across the board reflects the time preferences of everybody that's in the market, or basically everybody that's in the country, and so we'll be looking at the macro factors that changes the time preference of individuals. Obviously, we're not talking about a specific person. We're looking at the general overall time preference of everybody in the market. So COVID time, when all the governments around the world were writing big checks, everybody's time preference became high, i.e. present bias. And, cars were bought and houses were bid up and all sorts of stuff happened. And then as the squeeze has come, all of a sudden, the time preference of individuals has moved into the future. So you can see here that while you may pick an individual whose time preference may not have moved that much because they, either really rich or they weren't well off to start with, and so their time preference didn't make much difference. But we're looking at the colossal of the mass and seeing where are they moving, because essentially we're marketing to the masses, whether we like it or not, right? So the natural interest rate determines how much people want to choose to save versus consume immediately. And I won't get into the central bank stuff. That is a rabbit hole. We'll pick some other day. So high time preference means I prefer to consume now. Fewer savings and higher interest rate because I'm consuming money. So therefore, in order to get me to save, the rates will move higher, essentially. And then obviously, if more money is saved, then rates will go lower because there's more available. So competition for money is less, right? That's essentially how the time preference translates into interest rates. Right, so why time preference matters? Because it explains, it's not just not a financial tool, it's the natural outcome of human time preference, evident even in non-monetary decisions. So for example, if we barter, right? I say to you, I'm going to give you fertilizer, you're going to grow some potatoes or whatever fertilizer you use for, and you might be like, you know what? Okay, for a kilo of fertilizer, I'm going to give you, a bag of potato. You're like, nah, not a bag. I want a bag and a half or whatever. So whether money is involved or not, that idea of I'm going to delay something translates into even in a barter-based situation, especially where there's going to be some delay in the outcome that you are going to be receiving, or an outcome that is brought forward has got value. So anything you move forward, you can discount. Anything you move back, you're going to have to pay a premium, right? Basically, that's the overall theory here. Right. So the most important one is the last one here, which is the understanding time preference sheds light on saving, investment, and consumption behavior, which is what we are interested in as marketers. So I'll just go through a couple of graphs here, not specifically about Australia, but just to sort of step back and see like when you start looking at these sort of things, it shows up in real economic data. And as much as marketers, we don't look at this, at least the broad section of marketers don't particularly look at this sort of stuff. This actually matters. So for example, let's say if I was marketing in 2020, where we had almost, and I believe this would be globally, would have some similar reflection. In 2020, only 26% of income was spent on rents. But, literally, 4 years later, all of a sudden 33. Now you go from, 26, which is a multi-year low, it's the lowest since 2006, all the way to an all-time high, right? Now you can't tell me that's not making a massive difference in the consumption patterns, i.e., instead of having, Wagyu or, marble nine ribeye steak or something, I'm eating chicken or something. That's what that means, right? Across the board. Obviously, not the individual here, but we're looking to see that when the amount of disposable income is shrinking, what's actually happening to the offer you're going to make. So I was out at earlier tonight. We went out for a quick meal, and because it's Monday night, obviously it's a slow night. The restaurant was doing like $5 house wine, which is unheard of in Australia for many years. I don't know anything that's available for $5 here. So, but you can see what they were doing. They were essentially, trying to, move consumption on a Monday by giving you a better deal. And I'm guessing largely probably has resulted with something along these lines. And I'm seeing more of that sort of fixed price thing, or if you buy, a main and a dessert or something, we'll chuck a wine in, or if you buy the first two courses, you get the third one free or discounted or things of that sort. And you can see sort of the market behavior is changing to reflect these things that are happening in the market, right? And so oftentimes when you're trying to redo your offer, this can have an impact, or actually will have an impact. Now, it won't have an impact when you go from here to here, but it has an impact when you go from here to here. And that's the point I'm trying to make here, that there's a time factor involved in this. And I'll cover that shortly here. All right, this is for mortgage payments in Australia. If you think about it, in 2020, the average mortgage was only 30% of income was used to pay the mortgage, and now it's 50%. I mean, you can't tell me that's holidays gone, that's flights gone, that's premium dining gone. There's I don't know upgrading to a bigger house gone, or impacted in some way, right? And it's been shown, it's reflected in the numbers now. So if I was doing real estate here and real estate here, it's a totally different ball game. So I can't take my claim, back in 2020 things were so good. Yeah, of course they were good. Look at the numbers. Yes, they were good. They were good for everybody. All right. And so it's not like Facebook's trying to punish you or anything of that sort. It's the amount of the quantum of free cash flow that's available in people's pockets itself has changed. All right. There's another one, pretty much reflecting something very similar. The years it takes to save for a deposit. The 20-year average is 9 years. So, you start working, you save for 9 years. Now it's gone from 10 to 10.6. May not look like much, but it's a good 11 or so % increase in the amount of time it takes to save. And this could be disheartening because you're saving forever and you still can't buy the place. So it could have some impact. It may not look like much, like, oh, it's only 9 to 10.5 years or 10.6 years, but it could have a massive impact in the market because by the 10th year, they may be exhausted from saving or whatever. The thing that the dream of owning a home is gone. So there could be a lot of second order, third order effects that are coming through when you start understanding sort of the story behind the numbers, if that makes sense. It's not so much about the numbers, but what's a story that you can derive from this. This is a particularly important one. This is real wages in Australia, and much like most Western countries, I think, except maybe the US, where it's actually been on a decline, or at least has been on a decline, a slight increase recently. But this is largely increasing because of a lot of government handouts being given. So it's being funded through debt, essentially, right? So once again, I'm not here to debate whether it's the right thing to do or wrong thing to do. Essentially, just to read the tea leaves and say, listen, this is what's happening, and what does that mean? So if I was making an offer at this stage versus an offer here, it's going to be totally different, or potentially different, I should say. All right. This is more from a B2B perspective, because I know not everybody is in B2C. In B2B, this is also a global trend in most countries. So here we have the real stock per person. By real capital stock, meaning the machinery and the sheer investment per person in a country, right? And that's been on decline since 1965. It's a bit of a scary stat, actually, and has been declined ever since. And so you can see here, as a result, the GDP per hours, so the amount of gross national product, domestic product per hour worked, has been on the decline. And so what this basically means is that we are grossly underinvested in capability in the country as a whole. right? And so if I was doing a B2B offer, I'd be looking at, how you can, introduce efficiency gains and things of that sort. Or it could be reflective of that, because if the capital stock is going down, then there is an opportunity here to see if there's any impact on businesses and how best can you spin this. So the data is telling me what I may want to look into, if that makes sense. All right, here we have the household incomes. They were growing quite nicely until about 2010, and then it sort of slowed down, and that's the decline part that I showed you earlier, and we can clearly see that there's been a decline here in the consumption or real consumer spending on a per capita basis. So that's what we sort of this picture is reflected in most Western countries. I don't know of too many other countries, or not that I've looked at the data for other countries, but that's the sort of basic situation we're looking at. If the last few years, things have sort of been on the decline in real terms, which is after adjusting for inflation. So how do we work in this environment? Right, that's the question. Right, I'm going to go to the Word doc, and we'll go through some concrete examples of what to look at. I'm going to increase this size here. First, any questions on this stuff before I move on to this? Hopefully, the idea of time preference makes sense. I've covered it before, so should not be a foreign concept. All right, cool. No questions. So I'll move on to, let's see, now maybe too big. All right, let's go 150. All right, so just a few things. Interest rates, if they're rising, then obviously it discourages borrowing big purchases. Obviously, it hurts. Falling goes up, and this is kind of like your COVID environment where things went down, as in the interest rate went down, so everything got bid up. Valuation companies got bid up. Expenditure on consumption items got bid up, and things of that sort. So it was a good time to be making an offer, because there's a lot of free money being driven into people's pockets. Now things have obviously gone the other way, and so things are getting a little bit tighter. Similarly, with inflation rates, unemployment rates, your GDP growth rates, the consumer confidence, so on and so forth. I don't want to. Everyone will have access to the docs. So I just want to sort of cover the impact part on the offers we make. Right, so a pitch that you can make for based on different time preferences. So firstly, this is an idea for thinking. They are not recommendations. So obviously every offer will be different. Every market is different, and so I want to sort of underscore that first. So don't just use this, but use this as a way to say, like, right, there's two ways of seeing the same thing essentially. Right, so it allows you to increase your options for testing, and that's the most important part in why we're covering all this stuff. It's not because we want to learn economics, it's because we want to realize that there may be another conversation that I can have with the marketplace that I'm not having right now. So with testing, it always follows the same framework, and I've shared this in the past, which is where we go wide before we go narrow, before we go deep. So by wide, which is we test lots of different conversations, lots of different ideas, and then once we find something that hits, then we go narrow. So we're looking to see the first 2 or 3 interactions. Can we get that done? And then finally we go deep, which is things like when people give you name, email, phone number, and all that sort of stuff. How do we optimize for that? So sometimes people end up focusing too much time on deep before they've worked out wide. So i.e., can I find a basic idea that I can present to the market that is going to get them to click and it is interested in? Because what it tells me is here's an idea that the market likes, and the way to find out if there's an idea that the market likes is to obviously test lots of different ideas. So almost not even worrying about how deep the funnel goes and if your form is going to perform or not. Let's get the click-through rate going first. Let's get the first node or the landing page click, or the click on the call to action, optimized first before we worry about do I really need to go down the rabbit hole and see if my form is really in the right place? Because there's an opportunity cost, right? You start optimizing down here when that time, energy, and money could be spent on the front end or on the ads or the creative and the targeting. So you want to spend more time there first before we go down. Obviously, we don't want to just be sloppy about it, but as long as it works, it clicks. The goal is ensure that it works, but doesn't have to be optimized, because we're not quite there yet. We want to spend all of our energy and time on the ads and the creative and the targeting. All right. So the audience or the prospect obviously matters a lot. So marketing ideas are there to find pockets of people who resonate, right? So if I say, so zero down solar versus solar rebates versus get the government to pay for your solar, right? There's 3 different ideas. I present to the market. I track them on TikTok, Facebook, Google, whatever, and I see that it's bringing in certain pockets of people. 1 or 2 of them may get a very high click-through. And so I'm seeing that there are people that are audiences that are self-selecting themselves, that this is the idea that I like. I like the idea the government's paying for it. I like the idea that I'm getting a rebate, or so on and so forth, right? And so you might find a pitch that has lots of traffic and leads, but does not mean there's money to be made there. So i.e. there's no sales conversion to be done there, right? But at least that's the thing you want to test for. So we take those groups of pockets, we take them all down to final conversion, and we see which idea or conversation with the market has got value in it, right? Or we take the volume and we create the offer and we can fund the front end. So this is an example of a well-constructed offer. This is something that I worked on some months ago now. So like a 10K or 20K program, whatever it was. It was somewhat of a high dollar value a program. The offer is, you can buy now for 7,000. It includes a whole bunch of buy now bonuses or whatever, valued at some number, 15,000 or something, right? And then the second part of it is buy with terms. This is where you do 277 or something like that per month for 3 years. So that's basically 10K divided by 36 months, and that gives you over 3 years. So so essentially what I'm telling someone is do you want to spend 7K upfront, or you just want to spend 277? They're 2 separate markets, right? And obviously you do not include the buy now bonuses. They only belong in the high ticket or the buy now or the pay now option. Both get bonuses worth 10, but the people who pay upfront or pay 100% now, tend to, with a discount, tend to get some extra bonuses, right? Now the timing of bonus delivery. So you can have a live conference or some way to delay some of the value over time, or at a faraway point into the future. And the reason why this is done is to put pressure so that this person doesn't quit, right? Because you're not going to extract any value from someone paying you 277 unless they're staying in the program for 3 years or whatever it be, some prolonged period. So in order to do that, you need to construct a whole bunch of delivery of part of the product is split up and delivered over discrete time, and some of that value could be given way into the future. Once again, we're messing with time preference here to get the person to keep paying, because what we're saying essentially is that the value you're going to get in the future at some point is worth you paying 277 a month to get there, right? Because if you don't get there and you quit or whatever, then you don't get that big fat bonus or whatever it is at the end there, right? Now, so 7K now, so this is to those who can afford it, high time preference. 10K with terms, which is 277 per month, is the low time preference, or people who can't afford it. Right, so here's an example where we've been able to include both, and we try and kind of make sure that whoever can pay up front, we have a way to extract that. Whoever can pay over time, we get to extract that. But we're getting compensated for it, because over time, obviously, we get 30% more, and that's the interest rate that we are getting ourselves for delaying getting the money. And because the person is not paying up front, they're also delaying paying you over time. So therefore, they pay 30% or more, right, for it, essentially. Right. I hope that makes sense. Any questions on sort of how to think about this? Is sort of like a stock standard high ticket info product offer is how it's generally constructed, with this sort of a pattern where you come up with a program, and then you give a big fat discount to buy now, and then you give terms, but then the buy now people get a whole bunch of bonuses that the people who get on terms don't, and so on and so forth. So to essentially increase the perceived value of the cash up front, and penalize or make them a FOMO basically to anyone who gets onto the terms, but it's done in such a way to maximize the number of people who could possibly pay big dollars up front to pay up front, and then the rest of them, the laggards, get to go on the 277. Right? Any on some sort of payment plan. Right? Any questions on this? Cool. I'll make sure my chat's open. Okay, cool. All right, no questions. Cool. Okay. all pretty clear. Okay, so now looking at let's say just pick 4 separate products, and construct 2 separate types. So once again, these are just ideas to play with, not necessarily an exact offer that you would make. So investment product, you'd consider $100 bonus now for starting now. You're going to see returns in 3 months for quick growth options. So with short-term time preference, this is your newsletter market for in the investment space. Options trading, things of that sort, where you're going to get a quick payoff, while this is going to be the long-term time preference. So this is the building long-lasting wealth and watch your money compound over time. Obviously, the market for this is someone who obviously wants to grow fast, enjoys risk, or wants risk. This is someone who's actually risk averse. Now, the point here is the reason for presenting in this way is because depending on what your current wealth is, or what your current starting point is, I should say, or the initial condition, people switch over time, or can switch over time is the point I'm trying to make. So someone who's just starting out and they're 20 years old, they may not have much, they might maximize their risk taking. Because they're looking for a big payoff, right? So a good example is someone joins a startup, or someone joins, some sort of a work where it's awfully risky. It might not work, but the payoffs are massive. While once you're worth, let's say I don't know, let's say $5 million or whatever, you're probably not going to be interested if someone said, no, just put all your money in here. We're going to quadruple it in 22 days or something. Right? That's probably not going to appeal to you, because preservation would kick in because of your initial condition, which is, i.e., the initial condition to start with, which is the 5 mil versus 0 or very little, right? So people do switch.
Sorry,
and the way you present your offers, makes a difference to the kind of person you're going to bring in. Sorry, Paul, you had a question?
Yeah, no, just obviously it's always with direct marketing, it's always faster, easier, quicker is kind of like what people go for. But do you feel experience will kind of flip them, like a 50, 60-year-old who knows they're not full of shit and goes, well, that's not actually possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, one of Gary Bencivenga's biggest promos was get rich slowly.
Yeah, because he knows the type of person that's actually knows the score.
Or that particular newsletter was going to appeal to a slightly larger, older audience, I should say, not larger, or older audience that probably had a bit of a nest egg already built. So we're not removing our audience here, okay? And that's the reason why I said this up front here. That's very important to remember, that it's about the audience matters a lot. So by presenting an offer that looks fast, easy, quick, and all that sort of stuff, you actually may bring wrong people into the funnel. And so if you're trying to sell like a get rich slow product, but you position it this way, well, you're just gonna get the wrong person, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's all like the audience is essentially the ultimate source of truth. But that doesn't mean that you can't test a version of it. Or perhaps your main position might be this, but you might sweeten it with 5% of the portfolio is going to be something that's fast and something that's exciting, because that may be required to get the person to sign, or whatever it is. So in fact, right now, there's a bond broker. In fact, the guy that I use to do a lot of trading with, I shared with him the example that I shared in last week's call, which was property investing versus just rolling rolling the interest of bonds, and how if you took it 10 years out, the property investing actually was not going to pay off that big, and he hadn't realized that. And I said, you should position bond investing as an alternative to property, because everybody hears, oh, property is the best thing since sliced bread. Well, that's because no one's ever said that property is the worst option out of this other option that's safer with less hassle, and you're not going to get a phone call when the tap breaks, right? So all of a sudden, because what they're trying to do is sell bonds as he is a quick and he is a boring way to sort of preserve your wealth, or to kind of keep your wealth, or to income generate from your wealth. And so people are like, oh, no, I'll just buy property instead. But once you position it against property, all of a sudden you're having a different conversation. So I shared it with them, and I said, hey, if you guys need help with the lead gen side, let me know if that query comes back. It's a large corporate, so it'll take 12 months to get anything done. But if it does come back, I'll just put it out into the leads group saying if anybody's interested in working with these people, just reach out. So that's the point I'm making, is that it starts with the audience and how you position it. And it's not I don't want to make it seem like it's either or thing, but sometimes you have to lead with one version to introduce the other, or vice versa, and things of that sort. So like I said, the idea is to create a playground, but the notion that everything has to be fast, easy, all that now uh, depends on the audience. Because a sophisticated audience will just see it as bullshit, and they're the ones that you may actually be wanting to attract. And they'd be like, nah, this is like my 30 years of experience tells me this is a lie. And therefore, no matter how good the copy is, it just doesn't click because they just know it's BS. Or they assume it's BS because their 30 years of experience tells them that whenever someone's tried to position something like this, it's always going to be some sort of a swindle of sorts.
Gotcha.
Right. So home loans, right? Move into your dream home now with no down payment. Now the whole solar thing is being sold in that way right now. I'm seeing a few solar ads at the moment, which is zero down solar. Are you sure the government's paying for your solar, all that sort of stuff. And you can see here that pitch is actually a high time preference pitch. Is you don't do anything, someone else is going to pay for you, right? Which has to be the positioning in the current market based on the graphs we saw. In fact, that's probably going to be the only thing that gets someone to click to show some interest. And then obviously you would kind of present this in a more face-to-face conversation or whatever. You could present that side of it as well, saying, hey, listen, while we are getting in pay, this is how you actually make money over the long term and all that sort of, but it gives you a bit of time to get in front of them. But if you just started with this, you're probably going to get nowhere, because obviously in the current market where money is tight, they're looking, their primary focus is how do I make sure that it doesn't affect my cash flow? And so the offers have to be positioned in that way. So just to kind of go back to this example here, it basically means is that this is probably going to be where a lot of these offers end up being. So let's say 2020, you may have found a lot of people take up this option, but now you're going to find that a lot of people take up this option. And and that's just the way it's going to have to be, because there's not a lot of free cash flow lying around, or certainly the billability factor is not there. Like, listen, things are a bit tight, man. So I don't know if I want to commit to, 7K up front. I'd rather just pay you 227. If it's crap, I'll just cancel. And so that would be, so does that mean that this doesn't work? No, not at all. It just means that less of 100 people that sign up, you're going to get a lesser number that go for this, and more or higher percentage that go for that. Now, if you're smart, what you can do is you can kind of make sure that you are doing it with some sort of a credit provider. That way you can immediately sell these receivables to some sort of a finance provider and get cash up front for it, which is usually the way to do it. So essentially what you're doing is you sell the 3-year the 3 years of cash flow, and it gets discounted right now, and you get paid up front. So in your case, you'd say, listen, we're going to collect 10, but the finance provider might say, I'll give you 8 for each customer you sign up, and you get the 8 up front, or 6 up front, or whatever number up front, and we'll take the payment terms over 3 years. So that usually is how it should happen, or that's how it actually happens. Where you don't necessarily wait around for it. You just sell the revenue stream to some finance provider. Right. Going back to down here. Right now, you're going to look at sort of something like weight loss. So same thing. As you can see here, that probably is what sells. Short-term time preference. I'm not sure if money is going to make too much of a difference, unless you're selling a $25,000 program or something. But you can see here that the weight loss example, it is going to be bulk of the market is going to be here. but you are going to find some percentage of the market that actually sits into slightly a longer term, and based on the meal plan businesses that are out there, like your Weight Watchers and those kind of guys. This is similarly a large enough market size, but the person buying this is different to the person buying this. So this is someone who's diabetic, perhaps heart disease, a little bit age maybe, and they realize that they're not after six-pack abs in 10 days. They're after a lifestyle change so they can last longer for their grandkids and so on and so forth. So the motivations are different. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It just means that the type of positioning you do, which is the high time preference or the low time preference, is going to bring different groups of customers, because the conversation is different and you're appealing to a different type of person. Which goes back to the original point, is that it all starts with the audience or your understanding of the audience. Right, so that kind of covers this week's call. I hope it sort of makes sense that the awareness of economics and finance kind of has an impact. I guess the main thing that I wanted to cover off is that oftentimes you're not going to see much of a difference in your marketing messages not working in the short term. So what I mean by that is, let's say, as the cost of living was getting worse, let's assume that's a proxy for cost of living. Let's say from here to here, you may not have noticed much, like that old whatever worked on the way down may be working slightly on the way up, and then it's kind of like starts kind of dying over here, and you're like, oh, my campaign's fatigued, and maybe not. I mean, yeah, the campaign has fatigued, but it hasn't fatigued because the message is wrong or whatever. It's fatigued because the economic situation of the underlying market has changed. Therefore, whatever you're proposing to them is no longer as appealing as it previously was. So should the market turn back around again and go back down here, perhaps something that worked down here would start working again. And this is why in the Facebook post that I made, it's important to often see, because everyone studies old copy and say, Gary Halbert wrote this and Gary Bencivenga wrote this and Clayton Makepeace wrote that and all this sort of stuff. You want to look at the context when it was done, right? So what were the interest rates at the time? What was the economic situation at the time? And so on and so forth. All those large offers, I'm not going to say that they're always that some economic situation is going to have an impact, but it could be highly reliant on when the offer was done and the context within which those promotions were done. And if you look at those economic situations back then, or whenever those campaigns were run, they would be quite different to today. And so while we can learn some lessons about how the wordsmithing was done, how the offer was created, how the positioning was done, it may not always translate directly to our world, because the economic situation has changed dramatically from when that thing was done. And that was the whole point of the Facebook post, is that the context within which we are doing marketing probably has an impact, or perhaps a large impact, and so we want to not ignore it, and you want to be sort of aware of it, and therefore when you're constructing your offers, you want to come up with, or the positioning or the pitch or whatever you want to call it, the hooks and appeals. You want to cover a large variety, and knowing the environment within which this is happening. Hope that kind of makes sense. I didn't get a lot of comments today. I don't know if it's a good thing or not. Give me a thumbs up or down, or question. Cool. All right. Awesome. Yeah, so it's not like one of those calls where I'm giving you like 5 tricks to use, but more just to be aware, more of an awareness. Yeah, okay, so the factors to look at largely is just household income, so real household income, which is basically this graph here. We would look at just one number. I would probably look at the real wages, or the sort of like the take-home pay, after-tax take-home pay. Now, if you can't find real numbers or real wages, which is adjusted for inflation, then you want to look at the disposable income after tax for the individual or the household. And that often reflects, because that tells you like what the reason why you want to adjust it, why I like real, or why you want real, is because in a high inflation environment, you might have wages that are increasing, but you're actually still getting poorer, because the cost of living, the goods and services we are buying is increasing at, let's say, 10%. Our wages are increasing at 5%. So that would be an upward graph if you were to look at nominal wages, but we're still getting poorer because the purchasing power loss is greater than the increase in wages. And that's the reason for real, because it kind of tells you, how it's really hurting, if that makes sense. All right. Okay. Yeah. So that's yeah. If we look at one, just one, then that would be kind of like because this is all, yeah, just everything just flushes out in that one number. Okay, but if you can't find this, then proxies like these matter, right? You think about it. Of the average person that's out there, their largest cost or expense is going to be mortgage payments. So if you showed me, so let's say we didn't have access to this graph here, and we only had access to let's say this graph here because a bank releases this number or whatever, and I saw that, holy crap, it went from like 30% to 50%. That is basically this, right? It's the same thing, and so it's not a perfect proxy, but if you were to sort of think through the whole thing, you realize, well, the largest expense that someone's going through is their mortgage, and if their mortgage chewed everything from 20-30% of your income to 50% income, guess what? You're hurting, or everybody's hurting, I should say, and that basically is highly reflective of what that number would show. Right. I have another question here. Is the average loan amount average debt amount available? You mean to say the outstanding loan amounts that in an economy? So almost like what everybody owes. Is that what you're referring to? You could just clarify with the question. Is average loan amount, average debt amount available? So, yeah. Okay, yeah. So that's over here. In the trading economics would have that. So if I look at let's say UK, let's see if I can find it. United Kingdom. Where would that be? Maybe it's England. Oh, sorry. It'll help to look in the right place. I think you guys are in Europe these days. All right, yes, you are in Europe. Okay, cool. So you can kind of have a look at, for example, the GDP numbers. Let me see if I can find. Labor is usually where you're going to find it. The unemployment rate, full-time employment, wages. So there you go. It's a GBP per week. So that could be a proxy for that, excluding bonuses. So there you go. There you go. Real incomes, excluding bonuses, including bonuses. You could take one of these ones. If I click that, and I can see a graph. Right. So maybe go 10 years, and that's it. So I can see that there was some declines, and then now it's increasing. Right. So that would be and sorry, you said debt, right? So let's look at a consumer, and let's see personal savings. And in fact, personal savings could be, there you go, consumer credit. There's one. You got household debt to GDP. That's another nice measure. So yeah. So while you may not get the perfect one, but at least it gives you a good indication what it is, and then you can obviously Google for something, or maybe Grok or something for something more specific. But this is largely where, yeah, okay, yeah. So for car finance offers, yeah. So okay, hang on. Let's break it down here. Average loan amounts per person. Yeah. I think the more important part of the car finance one is sort of what's your reason for wanting to finance, or home finance or car finance, and seeing if they are ticking things like make payments easier or reduce monthly payments or whatever, and that would be, and match that answer to that node to the pitch or the appeal of the ad, and that way you'll probably see if a certain type of ad is bringing in people who are struggling with payments, And maybe that's the market that you're after, because there are subprime lenders out there that actually want those types of people because they make higher levels of interest, or not. You may want the other side, which is the prime ones. And so I'd probably start there. But if you were to look at actual numbers, yeah, just go to your broker. In fact, tell you the truth, if you're doing finance offers, then probably the most important thing is not the existing amount of debt. While it's nice to know all that, is essentially what is the appetite to give more credit. That is far more important because there was an offer that I know was working really well, and it sort of died. And it didn't die because people weren't interested in getting more debt. It died because the lenders were restricting how much they're willing to lend. So they were rejecting more deals. Well, let's put it this way. They were rejecting deals that previously would have been approved, if that makes sense. So I think working with the client or the lender, whoever you're working with, and seeing what the current conditions are is much more reflective of that. And then drive that to the ad and see if the ads are bringing in the right kind of a person that your client is looking for. Now, if you do find your client has changed their view, i.e., we only want prime leads or whatever, then but your ads are bringing in subprime or bringing in people that are not matching your client's expected. Then see if you can go out and find the subprime person. In fact, that was for one of the finance offers I worked on in the US. That's how they were able to really grow their business. So they had one client and they required like prime leads. It was a traditional bank, but about 30-40% of the leads that were coming through were not qualifying, i.e., they were not prime enough for the bank to touch. And so they were like, we're losing money here, and there's not much we can do on the targeting side. They tried to move the copy around, and they couldn't do much there. So the idea there is can you just find another client who wants that type of market, who wants that kind of business? And so it was a win-win. So the 30-40% who didn't qualify for the prime loans or didn't qualify for the loan that the bank was interested in got sold to the subprime person. And sometimes that's a faster, easier way to solve the problem than messing around with ads and targeting, because you may not ever be able to get that perfect. But you can actually absolutely find a company out there that is willing to buy those leads off you. Hope that answers the question. Cool. All right. Any other questions? No problem. I find it's easier sometimes to just get on the client. Because you can make a crazy offer to them, right, as a way to test your leads, because you're already getting them coming through. And so it's a different problem, right? You're not trying to find a client and then see if you can do leads. The leads are already coming through, and you're trying to say, well, hang on, I'm not liquidating my leads enough. In fact, there's a guy inside Leads Hook. I don't know what platform they use. So essentially, it's a platform. It's a lead distribution platform where you got to give your minimum price, and then it goes out into the network of buyers. So let's say he gets a lead, whatever it is, and he'll pitch it for $100. So minimum price that I want is $100, and he sees how many. So let's say he'll send 100 leads back into the platform, and sees who wants to buy at $100 or more, and so he'll get a bunch of bids. So maybe he'll get like one buy out of the 30 or 40 that wants to spend $100 for the lead. And he'll come back, and then he'll send it back, and he's basically looping through webhook nodes or API nodes inside Leads Hook, and he sends it back at like $70, and he sees like, can I find somebody else who's willing to buy between 70 and 100, I guess, and so he liquidates another couple of leads, and then he goes down to like $50, and then like $40, and then so and when I saw that at first, it was like this massive loop going on. And I was like, what on earth are they trying to do here? And so when I looked at the API node, I could finally see there was a variable called minimum price. And the minimum price kept going down with each API call that they were making. And that's when it occurred to me. I'm like, wow, that's actually pretty smart. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to find the best clearing price for every lead, irrespective of how many leads they get. So that kind of is an idea along the lines that there are businesses out there that will buy. You're correct. It's essentially like a dynamic on creating quiz funnels. Yeah, absolutely. Done. I'm going to be copying that. Let me copy this, and I'm going to add it into my notes here. That's okay. I'll edit on this side here. Text edit. New document. Cool. I'm just going to save it. All right, done. I'll make sure I cover that in next week's call. Yeah, good. So anyway, and that was a really smart way of selling every lead at its best price. And which means obviously their average revenue per lead would obviously be much higher than to have a bunch of leads that don't get sold, because he's trying to liquidate everything at any price, which is smart. Cool. Any other questions? I'll cover the next week. Yeah. Yeah, actually, yes, it will be. I'll tell you why why there was a delay. I'll tell you why there was a delay. It's because of this stupid thing here. All right, so anyway, that's the automation for it. As you know, I've explained I've explained what. So I was just using like a normal. I didn't have Google Workspace. So obviously, when you don't have Google Workspace, the automation or Google shuts your automation off after 7 days unless you have Workspace. So I got the Workspace, and then obviously now this automation is working. So yeah, it's in fact I'm posting a video about this in the next 20 minutes about how this whole thing was set up and what this loop does and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, a little bit of advanced speed SOS here. So yes, that should be up. I think by tomorrow it should be up, because as a result, then I'm saving everything inside, obviously, Google Drive, which is different to the other one. Anyway, long story short, it should be up in the next day or two. Yeah, no problem. Cool. Any other questions? Right. There's no awesome. Now, if there's no more questions, I'll cover the score wrap thing that you required next week. Otherwise, have a pleasant week. Hope it's a profitable one, and we'll see you here same time, same place next week. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.